My name is Susan. I'm standing at a large networking event, and across the room, I spot Mark. He's standing beside a woman in a sleek black dress, animatedly gesturing with her wine glass as he nods vigorously, wearing a wide smile. Our eyes meet for a split second, and his expression flickers with surprise, embarrassment, regret, and maybe a hint of longing. I give him a small, polite nod and then turn away. It's hard to believe that not too long ago, Mark was my boyfriend. Our relationship started off on an interesting note. I was a consultant in sustainable development, helping companies reduce their environmental impact. It was a niche, technical field, and not the most glamorous one at that. Mark, on the other hand, was 32 and worked in corporate communications for a tech startup. He was charming, with that polished way that made people linger around him. He came from a well-off family. His parents owned a large estate in the countryside, and they spent their summers at exclusive resorts. I grew up in a simple neighborhood where having a reliable car was a big deal. We seemed to fit together in that way opposites sometimes do. He liked that I grounded him, and I liked that he pulled me into social circles I'd never have entered on my own. But looking back, I realize it was more of an illusion. One Saturday evening in early September, Mark got an invitation to a dinner party at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. In Mark's world, the Thompsons were a big deal. Mr. Thompson was a well-known venture capitalist, and Mrs. Thompson sat on several important non-profit boards. Their suburban estate was the place to be for those in the high-end social and business circles. Mark was over the moon about the invitation. He spent the whole week floating around our conversations, acting as if he was already at the Thompsons' table, sipping expensive wine. He bought a new suit, got his hair cut, and spent ages deciding between two watches that looked the same to me. When I stepped out of my bedroom in a dark blue dress that hit just below the knee, paired with nude heels and simple jewelry, Mark's reaction was less than enthusiastic. "You're wearing what?" he asked. I was taken aback. I thought I looked presentable, an outfit suitable for a formal event. When I asked if there was a problem, he hesitated, and that hesitation stung. "No, it's fine. It's just..." "Never mind. We're running late," he said, grabbing his keys. During the 10-minute drive to the Thompsons' estate, the silence was thick. Mark had the music on low, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. I was trying to calm the knot in my stomach when he reached over and turned the volume all the way down. "Susan, I need you to do me a favor tonight," he said in that careful tone people use before saying something hurtful. When I asked what kind of favor, he exhaled and said, "Just try not to embarrass me. These people are way above your level. They're not going to want to hear about your environmental projects. Just smile, be polite, and let me handle the conversations." I was shocked. I repeated, "Above my level? That's what you think." He shifted in his seat and tried to explain, saying that they lived in a different world of high net worth individuals and major donors. I asked if he was worried I'd bore them, and he snapped that he was worried I'd make it harder for him to build the relationships he needed. He then softened his tone, saying he was under a lot of pressure and that this dinner could open doors for him. What he didn't know was that Mr. Thompson had emailed me 3 weeks earlier. One of his partners had heard me speak on a panel about sustainable investment strategy and reached out to see if I'd be open to consulting on a new initiative. Since then, Mr. Thompson and I had had a couple of calls and a video meeting. He'd specifically invited me to this dinner to introduce me to some people who might want to work with me. I hadn't told Mark because the project was still in the early stages, and he never really showed much interest in my work anyway. When we arrived at the Thompsons' estate around 6:45 p.m. It was everything Mark had described. It was massive, with clean lines, glass, and stone. The lawns were manicured, and there were valet attendants in black. Warm light spilled from the tall windows, and laughter floated from the back terrace. Mark checked his reflection in the rear view mirror, adjusted his tie, and told me to follow his lead. As we entered the house, a server led us through rooms lined with expensive art. When we stepped out onto the terrace, I spotted Mr. Thompson near the bar, talking to a small group. He turned slightly, our eyes met, and his face lit up. Mark murmured, "Okay, just let me," but before he could finish, Mr. Thompson excused himself from the group and walked straight towards me. He bypassed Mark's outstretched hand and shook mine warmly. "Susan, finally, we've been waiting to meet you in person. Mrs. Thompson's been talking about your proposal all week," he said. I saw Mark's face drain of color from the corner of my eye. "It's great to finally meet you, too, Mr. Thompson," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "Thank you for the invitation," he said. "Are you kidding? Having you here is half the point of tonight." Then he looked at Mark as if just remembering he was there. "And you must be Mark. Susan mentioned you'd be joining us. Wonderful to have you." Mark managed to shake Mr. Thompson's hand, swallowing hard. Mr. Thompson then clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "Come on, Susan. Let me introduce you to a few people who've been dying to talk to you about this sustainable investment pivot. Mrs. Thompson's inside harassing the caterer and muttering about ESG metrics." As he led me away, I glanced back and saw Mark standing there alone, his expression a mix of shock and panic. Throughout the evening, I was in my element. People were genuinely interested in my work. A woman who ran an ESG-focused fund said she'd read my proposal twice and that my section on supply chain emissions reporting was brutal in a good way. Another man, who headed a family office, was considering going greener with their portfolio and wanted my advice. Mark, on the other hand, was like a lost satellite. Every few minutes, I could feel his presence hovering at the edge of my vision. He laughed a little too loudly at jokes, and once he slipped an arm around my waist, squeezing my side as if to remind me we were together. It was ironic, considering he'd been worried I'd drag him down just a few hours earlier. Mrs. Thompson also approached me. She was a petite woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and glasses on a chain. She said, "There she is, the woman who made my board realize we can't just slap leaves on our logo and call it sustainable." She then pulled me aside to a quieter corner near the terrace railing to discuss my thoughts on pacing the implementation of my greenwashing tactics. It was a deep, engaging conversation that I loved. After dessert, Mr. Thompson stood up and tapped his glass with the back of his fork. He thanked everyone for coming and said that he and Mrs. Thompson had been looking for someone to help them align their investments with a sustainable future. He introduced me as the consultant working on a comprehensive strategy for their portfolio. There was a small wave of polite laughter and then applause. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, and heat crawled up my neck. As the party wound down around 10:30 p.m. People came up to me to say goodbye and exchanged business cards. Mr. Thompson invited Mark and me to come for dinner again, just the four of us. In the car on the way home, the silence was heavy. After about 15 minutes, Mark cleared his throat and asked, "Why didn't you tell me you knew Mr. Thompson?" I replied, "You never asked." He let out a bitter laugh and said it wasn't fair. I told him that he'd made it clear he wasn't interested in my work. Every time I tried to explain what I did, he cut me off or changed the subject. He said he was stressed and that he'd said something stupid because he was nervous. But I knew it was more than that. He'd shown his true colors. He hadn't respected me because he didn't think I was valuable in his high society world. When we got back to my apartment, he apologized, but it felt like a band-aid on a deep wound. The next morning, he sent me a long text, saying he was sorry, proud of me, and wanted to understand my work better. But I knew it was too late. Over the next week, Mark changed. He suddenly wanted to know everything about the Thompson project. He started introducing me differently at events, emphasizing my work with the Thompsons. His friends, who had barely acknowledged me before, started reaching out. It was clear he saw me as a new status symbol. Our first real fight happened 10 days after the dinner party. We were in his kitchen chopping vegetables for stir-fry. He casually mentioned that Mr. Thompson was speaking at a conference next month and that we should go. I said I wasn't planning to attend because I had client meetings. He was shocked and said it was perfect exposure for me and that he could network there too. I told him my work depended on results, not exposure, and that I wasn't a commodity to be maximized. He got angry, accusing me of being defensive and ungrateful. I told him he was trying to benefit from me, not help me. That night, I went home early and didn't kiss him goodbye. 3 weeks after the dinner party, the truth finally came out. We were sitting in his living room on a Sunday afternoon. He asked if I was even trying in the relationship anymore, saying it felt like I was punishing him. I told him I was realizing who he was. I said he only respected me now because I was useful to him and the people he wanted to impress. He stood up and paced, saying he'd apologized. I told him I wanted unconditional respect. He said I was ending the relationship over one bad night, but I knew it was a pattern. I told him I didn't want to teach him how to respect me, it had to be there naturally. He said I was throwing away the best relationship I'd ever have. I replied that he should be grateful because now he could find someone who met his so-called level. I picked up my bag and walked out, and he didn't follow me. In the following weeks, work thrived. The Thompson project expanded, and I got new clients. I even brought on a part-time assistant and moved into a better office. About a month after the breakup, I ran into Mr. Thompson downtown. He asked how I was doing and then about Mark. I told him we'd broken up. He nodded slowly and said that Mrs. Thompson hadn't thought Mark was right for me. He said she thought Mark was more interested in who I knew than who I was. A few weeks later, I saw Mark at this networking event. And that night, he texted me, saying he was sorry and that he'd been thinking. But I just set my phone down and didn't reply. After that, I met Alex, a high school art teacher. He listened to me, really listened, and thought what I did was cool. He introduced me to his friends as this amazing woman, Susan. It was like a breath of fresh air after being with Mark. Looking back, I'm grateful for the lesson. I learned that you can't build a relationship with someone who only respects you when you're useful. And I deserve respect on my worst days, not just when I'm in the spotlight.